At the arrivals terminal, the crowd surged forward as passengers poured through the sliding glass doors. Ethan gripped a small bouquet of white lilies so tightly that his knuckles turned pale. 3 months. That was how long his wife, Claire, had been overseas managing an important project. 3 months of video calls, lonely dinners, and promises that everything would return to normal once she came home. Then he saw her. She spotted him immediately, her face lighting up with what looked like genuine happiness. She hurried toward him, dropped one suitcase beside her, wrapped her arms around his neck, and whispered, "I missed you." For one perfect second, the world disappeared. But before Ethan could even answer, a tall man in a dark jacket walked directly behind Claire, picked up the suitcase she had just set down, smiled at her with surprising familiarity, and said, "Ready?" Claire nodded without hesitation. Ethan's smile froze. The man turned and continued walking with her bag as if it belonged to him. Claire looked between Ethan and the stranger, suddenly realizing how terrible everything appeared. "Ethan, wait," she said. His heart pounded so loudly he barely heard her. "Who is he?" Ethan asked, struggling to keep his voice steady. The stranger stopped several feet away but didn't interrupt. Instead, he stood patiently beside the suitcase, watching Claire as though waiting for her decision. Claire took a deep breath. "Please let me explain." Those words felt like ice. Every movie, every heartbreaking story Ethan had ever heard began exactly that way. He stared at the suitcase disappearing toward another man and felt every fear he'd buried during those lonely months rush back. Claire stepped closer. "His name is Daniel." Ethan laughed bitterly. "I wasn't asking for his name." Tears immediately filled Claire's eyes. "You deserve the truth." Daniel quietly wheeled the suitcase back toward them before speaking for the first time. "I'll wait over there." He walked several yards away, giving them privacy. Claire looked down at the polished airport floor. 6 weeks after I arrived, my company announced massive layoffs. My project was cancelled. Ethan blinked. "What?" "I lost my job." She swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you because we'd already spent our savings renovating the house. I knew you'd tell me to come home immediately, but I couldn't. I wanted to fix it first." "So who is he?" Claire glanced toward Daniel. "He owns a logistics company. I met him after my luggage was stolen during a business trip." Ethan frowned. "He helped me report everything, found temporary housing through one of his employees, and later offered me freelance consulting work. That job paid enough to cover my apartment and buy my ticket home." Ethan remained silent. Claire continued. "The suitcase he's carrying isn't mine." Ethan looked confused. She smiled weakly. "It belongs to his wife." Almost as if on cue, a cheerful woman holding the hand of a little girl walked toward Daniel. The child squealed, "Daddy." Daniel lifted the little girl into his arms while his wife kissed his cheek. Claire watched them with a grateful smile. They insisted on flying here because they were already visiting family nearby. "Daniel offered to carry my replacement suitcase while I greeted you." Ethan felt the tension slowly drain from his body. "You mean, I borrowed that suitcase because mine was stolen weeks ago?" She reached into her purse and pulled out dozens of folded receipts. "I worked every weekend. I sold my jewelry. I even skipped meals some days." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to come home without becoming your financial burden." Ethan stared at the receipts before looking back into her exhausted eyes. Only then did he notice the dark circles beneath them, the weight she had lost, and the faded calluses on her hands. He suddenly realized she hadn't been living an exciting new life. She had been surviving one. "I should have trusted you," Claire whispered. "No," Ethan replied softly. "You should have trusted us." She covered her face and began crying. He gently wrapped his arms around her again, this time holding her even tighter than before. You never had to carry this alone. Across the terminal, Daniel gave Ethan a respectful nod before walking away with his wife and daughter. Ethan nodded back. Sometimes the most painful misunderstandings begin with a single moment viewed from the wrong angle. As they left the airport together, Ethan picked up Claire's backpack while she slipped her hand into his. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. They didn't need to. The silence was no longer filled with doubt. It was filled with forgiveness, honesty, and a promise that no matter what storms waited ahead, they would face them together, not as two people protecting each other from hardship, but as husband and wife sharing every burden side by side. The drive home was unusually quiet. The city lights streamed across the windshield while Claire stared out the passenger window, twisting her wedding ring with nervous fingers. Ethan kept both hands on the steering wheel, replaying the scene at the airport over and over. Every emotion, fear, anger, relief, guilt, had collided within minutes, leaving him emotionally drained. Finally, Claire broke the silence. "I know you're still hurt." Ethan sighed. "I'm not hurt because you lost your job. I'm hurt because you thought I'd love you less if you needed help." She lowered her head. "I was ashamed." "For what?" "For failing." The word hung heavily between them. When they reached home, Ethan unlocked the front door. The familiar scent of fresh paint and polished wood greeted them. They had poured nearly every dollar they owned into renovating the little house, dreaming it would be where they raised a family someday. Claire stood in the hallway, looking around as if she were seeing it for the first time. "It looks beautiful. It never felt like home without you." She smiled faintly. Later that evening, while unpacking the few belongings she had managed to bring back, Claire carefully placed a small envelope on the kitchen table. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "My final payment." Inside was a check along with several handwritten notes showing every expense she'd tracked during the past 3 months. Ethan frowned. "You kept records of everything?" "I wanted to prove I wasn't wasting money." He gently pushed the papers aside. "You don't have to prove anything to me." Claire looked away. "You say that now, but I kept imagining you opening our bank account, seeing almost nothing left, and realizing your wife couldn't even keep her job." Ethan walked around the table and took both of her hands. "You know what I imagined?" She shook her head. "That something terrible had happened to you every time you missed one of our calls." Her eyes filled with tears again. "I wish I had told you." "So do I." Before either of them could say another word, the doorbell rang. Standing outside was a courier holding a medium-sized package addressed to Claire. "I wasn't expecting anything," she said. She signed for it and carried the box inside. There was no sender's name. Only a short handwritten note. For someone who never stopped helping others, even when she needed help herself. "Good luck." Daniel and family. Claire slowly opened the package. Inside were framed photographs. One showed Claire serving meals at a homeless shelter overseas. Another captured her reading books to children at a community center. Another showed her helping elderly residents carry groceries. Ethan looked at her in surprise. "You never mentioned any of this." Claire shrugged. "I had free weekends." "So instead of feeling sorry for yourself, you volunteered?" She smiled softly. "I figured someone always has it harder." At the bottom of the box sat another envelope. Claire opened it carefully. Inside was a letter from Daniel. "Claire, you kept thanking me for giving you work, but you never realized how much you helped our company. Your ideas saved us from losing several clients. My family wanted you to remember that difficult seasons don't erase a person's value. Never measure yourself by one lost job. Safe travels home." Folded behind the letter was another document. Claire stared at it in disbelief. "What is it?" Ethan asked. She handed it to him. It was a recommendation letter signed by Daniel, praising her leadership, honesty, and problem-solving skills. Attached to it was a business card from one of Daniel's partners in New York. Written across the back were 7 simple words: "Call me when you're ready to lead again." Claire covered her mouth. "I thought I'd have to start over completely." Ethan smiled for the first time that day. "Maybe this isn't the end." She leaned against him. "No. Maybe it's a new beginning." For the first time in months, hope felt stronger than fear. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, there would be no more secrets. Only truth. Only trust. And only the two of them, walking forward together. 6 weeks later, life had settled into a different rhythm. Claire was still searching for the right opportunity, while Ethan continued managing his small construction business. Money was tight, but something had changed inside their home. There were no more hidden worries, no more forced smiles, and no more pretending everything was fine. Every evening, they sat together at the kitchen table, discussing every bill, every plan, and every fear. One rainy Tuesday morning, Claire's phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello?" A warm voice answered. "Good morning, Claire. My name is Rebecca Lawson. Daniel shared your recommendation letter with us. We'd like to invite you for an interview." Claire's heart raced. "The position is Director of Operations for our new U.S. office." She glanced at Ethan, who immediately noticed the tears filling her eyes. "Are you interested?" Rebecca asked. Claire smiled. "Very interested." A week later, she walked into the company's headquarters for the interview. The executive panel expected confidence, polished speeches, and impressive presentations. Instead, Claire told them the truth. She spoke about losing her job overseas. About sleeping in a tiny apartment to save money. About volunteering on weekends because helping others reminded her that difficult times didn't define a person's worth. Finally, she admitted something she had never said aloud. "The biggest mistake I made wasn't losing my job," she said. "It was believing I had to carry every burden alone." The room fell silent. One executive leaned forward. "What did that experience teach you?" Claire smiled. "That great leaders don't pretend to be strong. They build teams strong enough to face problems together." The interview ended 20 minutes early. As she walked toward the elevator, she wondered if she had said too much. Her phone buzzed before she even reached the lobby. "Claire?" "Yes?" "This is Rebecca again." Claire stopped walking. "The board has already made its decision." She held her breath. "We'd like to offer you the position." Claire covered her mouth in disbelief. The salary was more than double what she had earned before. The benefits included flexible hours, relocation assistance if needed, and one condition she appreciated more than anything else. Family always came first. That evening, Ethan waited nervously at home. The front door opened. Claire walked inside carrying a small envelope. He immediately recognized the expression on her face. "You got it?" She nodded. Neither of them said another word. They simply embraced in the middle of the living room, laughing and crying at the same time. After a long moment, Ethan stepped back. So, when do you start?" Claire grinned. "Monday." He laughed. "I guess we should celebrate." Instead of choosing an expensive restaurant, they returned to the airport. Claire looked at him in confusion. "Why are we here?" He pointed toward the arrivals terminal. "This is where we almost lost each other." They stood quietly near the same spot where weeks earlier another man had carried her suitcase. Ethan reached for her hand. "I never want us to remember this place as the day we doubted each other." Claire squeezed his fingers. "Then let's remember it as the day we chose honesty instead." Just then, they heard a familiar voice. "Claire." They turned to see Daniel walking through the terminal with his wife and daughter. The little girl recognized Claire instantly and ran into her arms. "We're moving here," she announced excitedly. Daniel smiled. "I thought you'd like to know." Claire hugged his wife warmly before introducing Ethan properly. This time, there were no awkward glances or painful misunderstandings. Only gratitude. Ethan extended his hand. "I owe you an apology." Daniel shook it firmly. "You don't owe me anything. I judged you without knowing the truth." Daniel smiled. "I probably would have done the same." Everyone laughed. As they prepared to leave, Daniel looked at the couple. "You know what impressed me most about Claire?" Ethan smiled. "What?" "She never stopped believing in your marriage, even when she stopped believing in herself." Those words stayed with Ethan long after they drove away. Months later, Claire's career flourished, Ethan's business expanded, and together they turned their renovated house into the warm, joyful home they had always dreamed of. Looking back, they realized the airport hadn't been the place where trust was broken. It had been the place where trust was rebuilt. Because love isn't proven when life is easy. It's proven when two people choose truth over fear, forgiveness over pride, and each other over every misunderstanding. The end.